Today, I'm going to be talking about the change that I'm currently making in my meal planning schedule of eating. I was doing 2 meals a day for probably the last month, and the 2 meals a day was working really well. I had them set up so that I would eat in the morning, first thing, 7, and then I would eat again at about 11, so that I was having breakfast, midday meal, and then I would fast a 20-hour window until the next morning. And I was really enjoying that. Some of the things that I liked about it the most, I was saving the time of eating that third meal. I actually like that. That worked out well for me. I have an appetite to eat, and the food tastes delicious waking up in the morning. Tastes really good. And the other is, when I was eating 3 meals a day, I was kind of like full throughout the day. I'd go from one meal to the next, and it seemed like one meal just was barely done, and then I'd eat another meal and then another meal. And by doing the 2 meals in a 4-hour window, I would eat very hungrily in the morning, meaning that I had a good appetite for it. And the second meal would taste really good, but I knew that I wasn't eating with as much appetite, and that was fine, because it was still managed my meals way better than 3 meals a day. So I liked it. The change to 1 meal a day came about partly by accident. It was a very happenstance. It turned out that maybe 3-4 days ago, I was really busy, and I ate the first meal of the day and went to work. And as I was working on getting the things done for the day, I was so busy that I was unable to eat my second meal. And I just worked through the day, and by evening, I knew that I didn't want to eat late at night right before I went to bed, because I've tried that before, and my body doesn't do well with a meal late at night before I go to bed. So I decided I'd just skip the meal. When I woke up the next morning, it was 24 hours of fasted time, and I was actually feeling pretty good, energized, and was considering that if one meal worked that well for that day, maybe I could push all of the food for the whole day into that one meal and try it and just see how it goes. So I did, and I'm really glad that I did, because by moving all the food into one meal, I felt really good as the meal finished. The food was all delicious. It tasted good to the very last bite. And I was able to just carry on with my day, and without feeling like I had to schedule things around meals. I was just able to do what I had to do for the day, and it was great. It truly felt like eating to live rather than living to eat. And I value that. To me, that's important. And the food was delicious and very satiating. The energy levels that I have through the day are constant. There's not ebbs and flows. It's not highs and lows. Way better than 3 meals a day. I like it. And I say way better than 3 meals a day, but I'm actually comparing that to 3 meals when I was eating a well-rounded, balanced diet, which included carbohydrates, which, wow, that's a topic for discussion. I am glad to be fat adapted. I'm grateful to be able to eat my food in one meal and have it last the energy through the day into the next day. And I am changing from having a morning meal to simply a midday. That's my 1 meal a day. I changed that today. And here we are. This is a brief glimpse of what 1 meal a day looks like for me. I have simply taken the 2 meals a day that I've been doing for months and put them into the same meal. It's working. So here we are at midday, and I just finished 2 pounds of beef and 2 eggs. It was delicious. A bit of a status update as I go. Part of the reason that I'm doing this is because I realize how much learning I've experienced that I have a lot to talk about if I were to talk about everything that I've learned. So this video focused on 1 meal a day. The transition to 2 meals a day was really good, and now the transition to 1 meal a day is going good. For those who are already figured out what you're doing for your meals, awesome. For those who are interested in 1 meal a day, this is my experience. And for those who already haven't figured out, great, that's awesome. For those who may be still figuring things out, I'll share a few details about things that I've learned as I've switched from 3 meals a day to 2 meals a day, as I've applied the 1 meal a day. The first thing I learned was going from 3 meals a day to 2. I learned that by eating 3 meals a day, it's almost like food starts to get a little bit boring. Like, wow, I just ate, I have to eat again, same stuff. Like, okay. And the need for variety seems to be more predominant when I'm eating multiple 3 meals a day. By switching to 2 meals a day, my appetite improved. My sense of satiety after I finished a meal improved. And I enjoy going to bed almost like on an empty stomach. There was a day that I was too busy in the day to eat my last meal of the day, and I pushed it as late as 8 p.m. and then I went to bed at 9 p.m. Really bad idea. That did not work for me. So the 2 meals a day helps to avoid that late meal that I don't really want to eat anyway, and helps with the appetite, helps with the satisfaction around the meals. Switching to 1 meal a day, I had reservations. I wasn't really sure when I heard people talk about OMAD. I'm like, I don't know if that's for me, because I need more calories to maintain my body weight. My issue is opposite of the standard American. My focus has been, how do I get enough energy and how do I get enough calories to maintain a healthy body weight for me? So 1 meal a day didn't appeal to me because of, like, how do I make sure I get enough calories? Success with 2 meals a day helped me to feel comfortable in my calorie intake, being enough for my body weight and my activity level. So moving to 1 meal a day, my thought was, well, gosh, what happens if I feel full before I finish a whole 2 pounds of beef and 2 eggs? So I gave it some thought. In dietary recommendations for different animals, I have seen recommendations that say, feed them as much as they can eat in 20 minutes. It occurred to me that perhaps that's a good reference point. Maybe not a hard and fast rule, and it's definitely not what I use to determine how much I eat. But what I do is, when I'm making my meal, my 1 meal with 2 pounds of beef and 2 eggs, I cook all the food. And I cook the beef that I'm going to eat first, the ground beef, and I set it to start to kind of cool down so that it's not too hot to eat. And I let it cool while I'm cooking the eggs. And then when the eggs are cooked, put those on top of the ground beef. When I'm cooking whatever other meat, usually it's something like either a roast or a brisket or something like that. And as that's cooking, I'm letting cool the meat that I'm going to eat first so that it's not too hot to eat, so that I don't have to eat it slowly. I get all of that prepared before I eat the first bite of food. Now, I'm kind of the type of person who would say, well, this came off the grill, I'll just start snacking. I'll eat a few bites, I'll be like, wow, that's really tasty. And as that's kind of like sitting, the digestion is kicking in, and the timing for things like acid production and different enzymes and bile release from the gallbladder, all those things are kicked in because I tried a couple of bites of food to see how it tastes. I don't do that anymore, particularly with 1 meal a day. I do not even sample at all. And when all of the food is completely done, everything's like set, then I'll begin eating and I will set timer for 20 minutes. And my goal is be through half of it in about 8 minutes. And sometimes I feel like, well, okay, you got to stay on task here and not be conversational and like talking and doing something else. And then as I finish that first set, usually the ground beef and the egg, it's like, wow, that went down really good. And the ground beef doesn't require a lot of chewing because it's already ground beef. When it comes to eating the meat cooked steak style, where it's a piece and I'm cutting it into bite-sized pieces, I have tested out the idea that I don't need to chew every bite 40 times. Now that reference comes from many, many, many years ago. Naturopaths, chiropractors, different health people would kind of recommend that you chew each bite 40 times to make sure that you get all the saliva mixed with the food, so you get all the food broken down small enough that the stomach can digest it. In a way, those old recommendations were almost an acknowledgement that what we're eating isn't what our stomach is designed to digest. I have tested out chewing bite-sized pieces of steak and pieces of roast minimally. And I would say I've tested it out, meaning I intentionally minimally chewed meat for like days to see, is it going to lead to issues with digestion? Is it going to extend the period of time in the stomach? Is it going to affect regularity? Is it going to affect any of the things for digestion and elimination? And it didn't at all. And that has opened up a whole new window of thought that I have about the nutrition of meat being compatible with the human body. So here are the ideas. First idea is a majority of the meat itself is actually protein. A majority of the meat that we're eating is actually protein. And there's some connective tissue, but it's not like a fiber. It's not like there's a lot of material of the meat that's left over after we digest the protein out of the muscle fibers. And then the fats with the bile from the gallbladder, the body absorbs the fat. And when you consider how much fat there is, an 80-20 ground beef, they say it's 20% fat. It might be 20% fat either by volume or by weight. It is not 20% fat by calorie. By calorie, it's 65% fat, 35% protein. So if we're digesting the fat and absorbing it into our bodies, let's say we absorb almost all the fat into our bloodstream. Let's say we absorb all the protein into the bloodstream. The tiny bit of connective tissue that would be left would not be enough to make up for, or wouldn't account for the level of material in a bowel movement. So I was pondering over that and I was thinking, gosh, we're literally digesting and absorbing the fat and the protein, and the tiny bit of connective tissue that's left isn't going to account for the mass of a bowel movement. So there's one other answer, and I'm certain that this is accurate. Welcome any comments, suggestions, or even other thoughts if people have some other ideas. The thought is, in our digestive tract, from the stomach through the small intestine and through the large intestine, through the intestines, our bodies contain about 6 pounds of bacteria, yeast, and other microbes. 6 pounds worth. That's a lot. As I was trying to create almost like a mental image of what does 6 pounds of bacteria look like, they're so tiny microscopic. So there are a lot. It turns out we are outnumbered with number of bacteria in our body and on our skin than we have cells in our own body. Say 3 or 4 trillion cells within the human body. There's more than that number of bacteria. And that's kind of mind-boggling. So as I think about that, I'm trying to create a visual, and the only visual I have, because where does somebody see a collection of bacteria? You really don't. Maybe in an agar dish in a science lab, where you do the little petri dish and add some little cultures, and then all of a sudden this little fuzz starts growing, and it's like, oh, okay, I got some bacteria growing here. Or yeast or mold or different things like that. So the example that I think will make sense for those who have in the past, probably not as a carnivore, but for those who have made a home brew of any kind, like a homemade wine. When the wine sits and when the yeast cells settle to the bottom of the carboy, you get a layer of dead yeast cells that on a 6-gallon carboy can be a couple of inches thick. Now granted, it's mixed with some liquid, so it's not like 2 inches packed, but you get a significant amount of yeast cells, microscopic cells, that accumulate, that have digested the sugar within the grape juice and converted it into the alcohol and the carbon dioxide. And so if that analogy is working, it will make sense that as we have bowel movements and elimination, similar to the layer of yeast on the bottom of a carboy fermenting wine, similarly, our digestive tract is housing 6 pounds of microbes, bacteria, yeast, and whatever else. And those dead cells that aren't ours, they're from the microbes, those will make up a certain amount of the mass or volume of the elimination. And some of it, obviously, connective tissues such as ligamentous, the layer that wraps around the muscle. This is a post-production edit clip. I'm going to add this little piece. One of the strategies that I use, especially with 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day, I will refrain from drinking water right at the time of the meal up to about 90 minutes after, sometimes 2 hours after. The goal is to feel as though digestion has completed in the stomach. If I'm going to have a sip of water with my meal, I have a sip of water, but I don't drink a glass full of water. I would say are some of the insights that I've had on timing of eating and number of meals a day. Not as focusing on taking a long time to chew every bite. The realization that eating meat and fat, being fat adaptive, has a much more satisfying conclusion to a meal than all the days of different ways of eating that I've tested out in the past. So with that, that wraps up today's video. Thanks for joining, and hope to see you in the next video.